Greetings and salutations. You are listening to the Into the North podcast, where we take a look at the competitive side of the Commander format, also known as CDH. I'm one of your hosts, Lyndon, aka Noobzors, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts Matt, aka Null.
Yo.
Reed, aka Sick Robot.
Howdy, howdy.
And Morgan, aka Spleenface.
How's it going?
And in this episode, we will be covering new card evaluation. So, we're kind of on the precipice of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. So, when that's that coming out? Like the 18th or something, I think, around then? So, we should, if this episode comes out, yeah, we'll be coming out, I guess, mid. So, quite a few. We're recording this on the day where basically spoiler season started. Obviously, there's a bunch of leaks and stuff.
Yeah.
Prior. I mean, we got leaks and big quotation marks because.
Oh, let's not get into that.
Yeah, let's. Yeah, but bunch of official spoiler season started today. A bunch of cool stuff dropped, and we just wanted to talk about how to evaluate new cards because there's quite a few trends that we've all noticed in kind of the community when people are evaluating new cards. And we just want to share some of our tips and our kind of our process. But before we get into that, what have you guys been up to since the last episode? Anything?
Not a whole
Not
lot
really.
on my end.
Because I have been playing the ever-loving shit out of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Yeah, so it's basically the Yu-Gi-Oh! Version of Arena. And so that just dropped, I don't know, like a week ago maybe, at time of recording. And the last time I'd played Yu-Gi-Oh! Was the same time Reed had last played Yu-Gi-Oh! Which
It was terrible.
We had played, we had both, so I'd played, I think, I'd stopped playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In like 2014, 2015. And before then it was like kind of a brief kind of stopgap, and last time before then was like when I was like a kid, like very like I had stuff. I have stuff from the original Legend of Blue Eyes set, so like the very first Yu-Gi-Oh set, and so I've got a history with Yu-Gi-Oh, but it's been a long time since I played it, and someone had mentioned like, oh, this is coming out, so I checked it out, and it's been fun. I'll say this: they're really generous. So, like, unlike one thing I've liked about like Arena is great, and I love Arena, but the big problem I have with Arena is you have to be a heavily enfranchised player or willing to drop fat stacks if you want to get into like something like Historic, because people I play a lot of Historic, and people are like, oh, Historic looks so much fun. How much would it cost me to like build a Historic deck? And in paper, it might only cost you, couple $100, but on Arena, you got to drop hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I think Leptis from he mods the Frolic server, he mods the Turbonaut server. At one point, he was trying to get into Historic on Arena, and he wanted to build Dragonstorm. I think he dropped something like $400 or $500 to build Dragonstorm on Arena.
Just
and so like
so
insane,
much.
yeah.
That's it. Like you have to have been playing free to play for a long time, or like you have to be playing for a long time to just build up all of that kind of accumulated free to play stuff. And then also probably spend some amount of money to have like a decent Historic collection enough to build whatever you want. And even then, like you can't always build whatever you want. And so there's just no good onboarding for like new players if they want to get into the format and play a deck. The one thing I like about Master Duel, which is you start playing and the amount. So I think the pricing on their gems compared to like if you want to spend some money on Arena, what you get for the money is somewhat decent, but the amount of gems you get on Master Duel seems to be kind of like, at least they've got like a special deal pricing and like a like the regular pricing. If you look at the regular pricing and you were to look at how much they give you free as a new player, it comes out to like $500-$600 worth of like free gems and crafting points, which is insane for like a like just the new player to just have that right out of the gate. Which also means it could either be that they're giving you an insane amount of stuff, or their pricing scheme is like way out of whack, or it could just be a bit of both. But yeah, like you can join and just build a meta deck right off the bat. So I've been having fun with that. And then also, obviously, in between all of my Yu-Gi-Oh jamming now, it's checking out Neon Destiny spoilers, or Neon Dynasty spoilers. Sorry.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Neon Destiny.
fun.
Cyber.
Hey, the set could be named that. That sounds cool. That's a cool name.
Sounds a lot more like a not Kamigawa set, though. Anyway.
Yeah, it almost sounds like a Yu-Gi-Oh set.
He's too far gone. We need to leave him
I'm
behind.
too far gone, man, dude. It's over.
Mid-power podcast. Don't you mean
Yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh podcast?
Yeah. I think one thing that's going to be great. I know many of our longtime listeners, I'm sure, have missed all the 2v2 talk that used to happen in in this section of the
certainly
a
podcast.
half hour of the podcast that was dedicated
Yeah.
to 2v2.
And now I'm glad that I can substitute that in with Yu-Gi-Oh, so that's going to be fun for you guys. But yeah, I'll wrap it up there. Anyone have anything else, or shall we move on? Okay, then let's move on.
I've been playing very little Yu-Gi-Oh.
Actually, Morgan has seen a fair and has been involved in discussions surrounding Yu-Gi-Oh, because he'll pop into the Frog server every now and then everyone's just playing Yu-Gi-Oh, and then he'll say something along the lines of, "And then this is why I'll never play Yu-Gi-Oh."
And every time I'm right.
Wait a minute, they're basically at better ancestral recalls. This is why I'll never play Yu-Gi-Oh. Yeah.
If the Frog server just becomes a permanent Yu-Gi-Oh server, I think that would honestly just make the most sense to me. That would just be the end game for that server.
Very true. But yeah, so housekeeping. As always in housekeeping, we like to shout out our new patrons. And this week we have 2 new patrons. So big shout outs to Meraxis. I think I gave him a shout out in the last episode or 2 episodes ago about Tier 1 Con. So yeah,
huge shout outs
Meraxis
this
for
time.
becoming a patron. Thanks, buddy.
And classic side part.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. We love our new patrons. We love our existing patrons. You guys help keep everything running.
Yeah. You Pebble.
Okay.
That's too deep. Okay, I'll stop there.
Yeah, so and then our last thing in housekeeping is Marchesa 2022. Morgan Reed, do you guys want to go on top?
Sure. So they have officially set the date and the location. We'll put links to more information on that. It's March 26th to 27th, I believe, is the weekend at the Mox boarding house in Seattle. Again, we'll make sure to get this right. March 26th, 27th in Seattle. Should be awesome.
The venue is great from what I've seen. I know that there's been a fair number of relatively large profile tournaments held there as well for other formats. So
yeah, and we're hoping, at least some of us are hoping to
Hoping
make
to
it out
make it
there.
out.
Obviously, we don't want to make any commitments because the world is in the state that the world is in, but hopefully everything works out and we can go there and meet some of you guys and jam some games.
But
it looks like such a sick venue. So
whether or not we are there, we would recommend, if you have the means and if you're comfortable, going and checking it out. Because again, supporting the Monarch people over the Monarch is I think a great idea. They run some pretty good events. Also,
I know for a fact there's a bunch of really cool people CDH wise in Seattle. Shout out to Shaper, Keeb. There's lots of really cool people in Seattle who I'm guessing are probably going to be at the event, considering it's local. So
I also wouldn't be surprised if we might see some people coming up from like the more southern West Coast. So people in California, there's a fairly large scene just over on the West Coast in general. So
indeed, also Seattle, lovely city. But I mean, you're there to play Magic, right? Who's ever going to even see the city?
That's like the one regret of the Tier 1 Con trip is that we just actually didn't see Copenhagen.
Yeah,
I can't wait to go back for the first
we spent
time.
the most amount of time in Copenhagen for the event, and then we didn't see any of Copenhagen. Then we saw the other places that we visited. That was funny. Yeah, so that's it for housekeeping. Next on, we've got new developments, and I'll hand this one off to Reed.
Sure. So by the time this episode comes out, the next Decklist database update will have been released.
It's the November update.
Well, I will tell. Yes, I will tell you guys. Well, okay. So we got sidetracked by holidays. We spent basically 2 weeks off, not pushing at updates. But we are on an aggressive update schedule. It just so happens that the rollout of our more aggressive update schedule happened to coincide with a 2-week break. So we're going to push it out. And yeah, I mean, always remember, keep submitting your lists. If you didn't make it on for whatever reason, feel free to contact us and all that stuff. Join the Discord for notifications. And we're probably going to be opening up new reviewer applications after this update as well. So again, rather
Exciting.
Yeah, so if you're interested in being a part of the team and helping us to review decks and make a difference, it would be much appreciated. So keep an eye out for that. We'll have updates for all this on the database Discord server, which you can find on either the website, or we'll probably just put links in the description for it as well.
Right on. And so that brings us into the main topic for the show, which, as I mentioned, is evaluating new cards or spoilers, or, trying to decipher the really fuzzy picture that's, leaked.
That can't possibly be hybrid Phyrexian mana. It must be a smudge.
Yeah. Dude, why is it that every time someone is leaking, it's with a 240p, webcam?
Well, did you see it? Okay, actually, this is interesting because I'm pretty sure that we usually don't talk about ongoing spoilers when we record episodes. We typically
sometimes
wait until after they finish to acknowledge them. But there was definitely, I forget which card it was for, but there was one on the day that we're recording this that was actually impressively bad for what should have been an official spoiler. Right, it was the Wandering Emperor, which was diagonal and 4x4 pixels.
Nice. Yeah, no, it's yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, as Morgan said, we probably shouldn't get into the leaks and stuff beforehand, but yeah, man, just go on. I mean, we're not sponsored by Skillshare or any of those companies, but man, just go take a class on photography. It's not that hard to take a clear picture of a card if that's basically the only thing you're doing. But yeah, okay, so how do you evaluate a new card or a spoiler? How do you determine whether or not it's good, or if it is good, how good it is, what you should cut for it in a deck? How do you kind of place it in the hierarchy of existing CEDH cards and staples, and slots in a given deck? So we've got a couple categories. So we're gonna first discuss, I think, newer commanders. So if there's a commander or something that you're looking at, just on its own, compared to being in the 99, how do we evaluate that? So we've got a couple things laid out, and I guess we'll kind of just start with whoever wrote it can.
I think you wrote that. Oh.
Well, I mean, I guess it was Lyndon's point, but I guess I technically wrote it down. Anyway.
I wrote all my points below.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, we can sort of walk through. There are a few overall heuristics that we can sort of talk about here for evaluating new commanders. Just aside from basically anything that any specifics about new commanders or whatever, there are a couple of classes of things that new commanders do that you can sort of just generalize and class them into if it does a lot of these things, then it's probably a good choice, obviously depending on how efficiently it does those things. But anyway, I think what you have here, Lyndon, are 4 real categories of things that like real CDH commanders can do, which is like mana, as in generating mana, being a mana engine of some kind. Cards, so being a card engine of some kind. Being part of a combo, so whether that be an outlet or part of an additional combo with something else in your deck, or if it just tutors stuff in general. Which I guess you might be able to like combine or like express the tutor part of this as a combination of a cards and a combo engine, but
yeah,
not necessarily.
Like I'd say, yeah, Sidisi, Undead Vizier is not, quite card. It's not really card advantage, and it's not quite a combo.
It's sort of a combo. It just like tutors for Ad Nauseam. You just sort of do the thing.
So yeah, one thing in kind of these, mana engine, card engine, combo engine, tutor engine, these are they're kind of broad categories, and I can give some examples of how, So I guess a traditional, you could look at something very kind of obvious for a mana engine like Selvala, right? Mono green Selvala taps to add a bunch of mana. Pretty straightforward. Urza, it turns your artifacts into mana. Cool. Baral, it discounts your spells. Mana, right? Mana can be pretty straightforward. Cards or card advantage isn't just always drawing cards, right? Thrasios Tymna is literally just 2 card advantage engines stapled together in a command zone, and then the fact that they have partners itself card advantage.
And that you have a combo outlet.
Yeah. But just from the card advantage perspective, you can have kind of non-obvious forms of card advantage. You can have, I guess maybe card advantage. So, Baral, going back to Baral doesn't give you card advantage, it will give you card selection. But, if the card selection is strong enough, that could be, considered a form of card advantage engine. But then there's also things like Winota. Winota is actually what I would consider both a card and mana advantage engine. Oh, sorry, mana engine and card advantage engine. One, it's, turning creatures in play into more creatures, and then it's cheating the cost on those creatures. So it's, providing 2 of those things. And as Reed had kind of mentioned, the more things it does on this list, you should take an even closer interest. So one thing I like to say with, talking about mono blue decks is most mono blue decks do one of these things. Azami is a really strong card advantage engine. Baral, I talked about as a mana engine, combo engine. You could look at something like Arkham or whatever. But, Urza, the king of mono blue decks, turns out it does all 3 of these. So, that's the more categories it covers, the stronger it is. I think that's it. And this is a very broad list of categories, so it's not gonna be it's not everything that fits into one of these categories or fits into multiple is necessarily a CDH commander or CDH viable, but it probably has to be at least one of these if it is CDH viable. We were looking through the database and trying to rack our brains for commanders that have at one point been CDH viable or seen some CDH play that don't fit into these, and really the only 2 that we could come up with were Anafenza and Rurkthar, which are kind of just like stacked pieces.
And they're also just like sort of dubious in terms of viability anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess
exactly.
Sidisi Brood Tyrant also kind of fits that bill.
Sort of. I mean, she is
Combo?
like nominally a combo piece, right?
Okay, I guess if for the food chain.
Food chain,
So admittedly,
yeah.
the food chain builds, she's not a good food chain commander, but that's
No, she's not, because you also lose to just so much other stuff.
well, no, but like no, the issue with her as a food chain commander is that you can't use like she's a food chain outlet with like a dread return setup, so like you can't just consult for food chain because like
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
guaranteed
Like,
you kill
sorry,
your-
what I meant by losing to so much other stuff is you lose to so many more hits off of consult. Like you just
Yeah.
require to have so much stuff left in your deck after combined consulting.
Yeah, so I think that's it for my kind of brief introduction on these categories. we have some other things in terms of whether or not a commander is viable and how to evaluate that.
Yeah, this is like kind of a subset of Lennon's points for sure, but is it an outlet for a combo that the colored combo doesn't have? So yes, combo, but also can you take like maybe a high power archetype and a low color combination and do better? Does anyone have any particular examples here?
Well, kind of this point just made me think of something, which is it doesn't necessarily have to be because a lot of times in spoilers, if you're maybe a newer player or you haven't gone through Scryfall 20 million times, like probably everyone on this podcast has, there's some things when you look at a commander and kind of after you've been on knowing tons of Magic cards, you kind of develop a bit of a spidey sense for viability in commanders, where you can kind of look at a commander and you can kind of just be like, I think that has potential, right? I mean, some commanders you see and it's just obvious, but what you can kind of look for is in terms Matt was saying, an outlet for a combo that the color might not have. Is there some combos, some colors that have cards or card combinations that just don't have a good commander for them yet. And so, if you can look at a new commander, you're like, oh, this is a infinite mana outlet, and then it's like, oh, it's actually a really good infinite mana outlet for such and such combo.
For an example of something that's like not a combo but is like way more classic, it's like oh, this commander like works with like humility, or this works with stasis. Like that's like not necessarily a combo, but it's stuff that's like not is like historically like legendarily super difficult to actually slot into decks effectively. And if you can see something that's like, oh, this works with like one of those things that you've always wanted to play but can't really get to work in any shell.
Yeah. So yeah, developing that spices can be tricky, but if it does a lot of things that you've seen other CDH commanders do, that's probably a good place to start, and then just start running through everything that you can do in that color. Yeah. We also have, does it cover a weakness that its color identity has? And this is another kind of I guess sub category, because realistically, if you're looking at this, it's done something, it's triggered that spidey sense, and it's fit into one of the categories or multiple of categories that we had talked about. And here we're looking at maybe raising the ceiling on a low color combination or something like that. So you could have a red deck that is all of a sudden providing you a lot of card advantage, right? And I guess the best, there are some red commanders that are like Stormy that do card advantagey things. So Zada and oh god, what's the one that is it impulse draws off of dealing damage to opponents?
Florian is red black. Is
Florian?
What?
Sorry, no, Sir. Is Sir Kara?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh god. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah. So like that's what the red card advantage commanders look like right now. So if you see a commander that's doing some red card advantage, you can start looking in at spaces that are currently unexplored in mono red, and maybe there's actually something there. So
is it a non-green white commander that ramps?
Yeah,
that'd be nice.
True. Cool. So that's kind of our general heuristics for being a new commander. And honestly, the kind of sad part is it just really, you have to have experience, and kind of you'll know it when you see it in terms of CDH viability to some extent, and really you just have to compare it to this isn't like this gives you a guideline for whether or not you should be considering it as viable, but whether or not it crosses the threshold of the strength threshold is going to be something you need the experience to kind of determine. Like a good example of a commander that I guess is you could probably make a CDH viable deck, but like not an amazing one out of it, is like Rasputin Dreamweaver, where it's, you know, kind of a mana engine, but mostly a combo engine. And just has never really done much of anything in CDH. I mean, it could be that, you know, people just aren't willing to spend, what is it, 300, 400, how much that card costs now.
What? That much money on one card?
Did it go back down?
One bad commander, yeah.
I thought it went back down. It might not have.
I don't know. I don't know the price of Rasputin Dreamweaver. Off
Well, why? Clearly we're not professionals and we didn't do our research.
Yeah.
How could we not know how much a Rasputin Dreamweaver costs?
At this exact moment, it costs about $565. Yeah, okay.
Nailed it.
Anyway.
Cool. So that's the commander criterion. We've got some more points we're going to talk about, and we're going to also get into talking about individual cards and specific cards. So, but I'll pass on this next point to someone else.
Yeah. So I mean, so if we were talking about commanders and comparing them to existing commanders before, this one's more about non-commander cards and sort of the base level of looking at them in context of existing decks. So just like this is really the easy one a lot of the time for like potentially like new removal spells, new tutors, new, I guess, like stacks pieces sometimes, that kind of, or like just like card advantage spells, staples, that kind of thing. This is sort of the first place that you look for a lot of that stuff. Like where does it fit into an existing decks? Is it good enough for like higher color stuff? Is it only good enough for like niche, like lower color decks that like need a specific effect but don't have access to it? There's a lot of stuff here.
Yeah,
Really, I'd say in
the context of a combo, I think one type of card I try to look for is, can this piece in a combo simplify the combo overall?
I like that a lot.
Yeah, this is like, you know, pretty typical with like pod type combos or whatever, where you just have a lot of cards. Like, I'd love to see something do something simpler and better.
Yeah, I mean, there's, and it's sometimes not even simpler or better, but sometimes it could just be something like increasing the card quality of a combo piece, right? Maybe it doesn't simplify the combo or make it, you know, significantly cheaper or something, but, you know, it's just, it makes the, gives you a way to do the combo without having to run kind of dead slots, you know?
I feel like the best example of this is Godo pre-Helm, where like Lyndon, I feel like you're the best to talk about this, but I remember there being like some super convoluted combo where you had to get Kiki into play.
So
there's like Blade of Selves.
No. So okay, it was, you would go Blade of Selves into Masterwork and Hammer of Nazan, I think, and then you would go into Heirloom Blade, Nim Death Mantle, Death Render, and Mortar Pod. and because Godo was then a zombie, so dude, this combo was like refined over like a couple months, and then basically as soon as we were done, Helm got spoiled, and it was like, okay, well, we can destroy all that garbage. But yeah, and then like because Godo was a zombie, you sacrifice him, and then Death Render and Heirloom Blade, like they work to like search your library for the creature that shares a type, puts it into your hand, and then puts it into play. And the only zombie in your deck was Neheb, Dreadhorde General, the one that makes mana, and that's the one. No, that's Neheb the Eternal. Oh, whatever. There's too many Nehebs. But yeah, like, it was a very convoluted combo. It had like 15 moving parts. And then you would assemble infinite mana, ping people to death, and then they printed Helm the Host.
It was the Eternal was the right one.
The Eternal, okay. Yeah, and then they printed Helm the Host, and it's like, well, now we just need Hammer of Nazan and Helm, and we'll call it that. So, very much simplification. They are removing a bunch of dead slots. Although I'll say one thing that I do I guess maybe it's more. I was gonna say like it wouldn't necessarily be something new, but I feel like I like the inclusion of Sigil Tracer in over Isochron Scepter in kind of certain, like I guess like a Thrasios kind of based dramatic scepter deck.
I guess, yeah.
Like
I
it's
think
it's
got kind
that
of
sort
reverse
of
engineered a little bit.
yeah. It's this is a bit more of a dicey one because Isochron Scepter isn't kind of just straight up bad, but I think the kind of argument would be that Sigil Tracer has more kind of generic utility than Isochron Scepter, and then it's if you commit the problem with Scepter is like if you commit it to board to get value out of it, you're locking yourself out of combo. Whereas just playing the Sigil Tracer is both providing you value and keeping you open to combo and comboing at instant speed. So it's like and obviously this is a bit of it's a weird side grade because when you're going from Isochron Scepter to Sigil Tracer, it's looking at an older card and not a new one. But it's that kind of shift in card quality or the way it interacts with your deck that you might want to keep your eye on.
The fact that it's a creature is so big
true.
in that deck.
Did they print an effect on a creature that hasn't been printed on a creature before? Yeah.
Check.
They print an effect on a land that has been printed on a land before.
Oh god.
Take that back. Take that back.
I don't know. You know what? I'm just gonna let it sit. We can move past it. If you don't want to move past it, that's fine. But I'm just gonna let it sit there.
Well, yeah, maybe we'll save talking about current spoilers that were, because I mean by the time we talk about, or by the time this episode is out, probably a bunch of spoilers that are gonna have come out.
Yeah. I mean exactly.
But I'd be down to discuss some of the things that we've seen so far at the end of this, and we can kind of review them in real time and kind of give our thoughts to kind of put the tips and heuristics that we've been showing into practice. But yeah, so that's in the context of existing decks. Is it a combo piece? Does it improve on existing combo pieces, reduce slots, that sort of thing? And we have some more.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So for this next one, this isn't particularly in regards to hate pieces. Does it cover a wedge in the meta not already covered by another card? And this is especially important for decks that kind of do run slightly symmetrical hate pieces. Like, can you remove some of those and cover the same, meta piece that you'd like to cover?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not sure if there are like good examples of it.
Well, I think
wouldn't Drannith be something that's like
but
I like.
I'm not sure. Like, is there something that we had before Drannith that was like not as? I guess not.
I mean, so Drannith took the place of cards like Grafdigger's Cage in hating out
that's fair.
Things like Breach or Yawgmoth's Will. Obviously, they don't cover exactly the same stuff, but it's asymmetrical. I think another really good example of this was Deafening Silence, both in being an anti-storm card you could get down a lot earlier than others because it costs 1 mana rather than 3 like normal Rule of Laws or 2 like Thorns and Spheres, which are kind of iffy. But the other big thing is that there are a lot of decks that can really take advantage of the specific non-creature clause on Deafening Silence, and like anything with a lot of creatures, obviously like that's most extreme in a deck like Hullen, but even just like a mid-range Thrasios and Tymna deck can play it like pretty easily, and spend their turn developing their boards, hold up interaction, and you only need to cast 1 piece of interaction on other people's turns, and then like feel very comfortable playing the game in a way that like maybe they wouldn't under an actual factual Rule of Law. And so it's not just about like what does it hit, it's also like what can you still play with it, what does it not hit almost.
Yeah, Deafening Silence is a good example. I was honestly thinking like if Kess ever got a Grafdigger's Cage that didn't screw Kess, that would just be awesome.
I mean, you did, right? You got a Douthie.
Douthie.
Yeah, that's true. Too late though. Too late.
That doesn't stop. That doesn't stop. Like, because I feel like what
Stop
Kess also
Hulk.
wants to hit like the neoforms and stuff, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, op agent plus op agent plus Douthie.
Now you're a
Easy.
creature.
Yeah,
Now you're a
listen,
creature deck.
Commander Legends, Commander Modern Horizons Legends. It's just gonna be Douthie staple to Op Agent staple to Hull Breacher, dude. It's
No.
looking forward to it.
Wait, but do the flash from op agent and a Hull Breacher put together cancel out?
No, they make it so it's like a pack to where like you can literally
Oh.
play it for free. You just have to pay for it.
Yeah,
on
it's got the
Yeah.
the elemental invocation or incarnate. What are they? Whatever. The endurance. Whatever.
Oh,
No.
They
No.
got
It's
that
like rocket powered turbo slug. Like you can just play it for free,
Oh yeah.
and then you have to pay for it next turn.
In fact, you
Also,
can
a
play. You can
Panglacial
play.
Worm where
You
you
can
can just play it from your deck.
you can play it for free and attack with it on an opponent's attack
Yeah.
phase.
Yeah. And
Combat
it's got the
phase.
3/2 from all three of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
Can't forget that.
Of course. So on a slightly more serious note, and sort of building on the comment someone made, did they print something on a creature that didn't used to be on a creature? One of the things you should really look for when evaluating a new card is what tutors find it. Obviously, this is, I think, more prevalent with creatures than others because there's a set of like more restricted creature tutors, but it can also be relevant for something like merchant scroll finding things can be quite useful, or muddle the mixture in decks that are interested in that. Just having a piece that's more accessible than a previous piece to accomplish some given task can be hugely beneficial for those decks. Some obvious examples of this are Grist in particular was like creature tutorable
Yeah, that's
removal.
cool.
Was really big. Spellseeker, when it came out, was also actually massive because it sort of allowed you to turn it allowed you to turn all of the access you needed, or all the access you had to green creatures via the green creature tutors into the instants and sorceries that you needed. Obviously, that was more extreme with both Hulk and Flash being legal, but or like
just a bit.
with both Hulk being played and Flash being legal, but it's still a card that, like, in a lot of decks, lets you sort of turn one thing into another and like bridge a gap and thus increase the access that you have to like a very specific set of things. Or the various mages that have come out, like Tribute Mage and Trophy Mage, I believe, are the relatively new ones. That can find you like specific combo pieces in decks like that. Or Crater Maker as like goblin tutorable removal in mono red.
Baby.
Nexploration as a natural order tutor target? Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But yeah, just like it's important to sort of realize when a card, particularly when the effects are like pretty similar, one of the important things that might make a difference is just the accessibility you have to it, particularly for like a Silver Bullet type card. And I mean, I don't know how I got this far into this topic without mentioning Collector Roof, because I think that's the most
Oh yeah. Like the largest,
possibly
I
the
think
most
that's
important one of those, but
potentially the largest upgrade hate effect has ever had from a swap in card types.
Yeah, that one was huge. But yeah, just that's an important thing to consider, and it's generally not too difficult. Like, it's not difficult to see if you look at effects that people are already running and then just go like, okay, this does something similar to that, and voila, I can find it off of Green Sun Zenith.
I mean, that being said, you can certainly, like, I think the base case is very easy to evaluate, but certainly there are some things with it where, like, you get into like more niche tutoring scenarios. They can like have a real effect on how strong a card is, but won't be super obvious because it doesn't match up with like the existing like super commonly played tutors.
I was gonna say wizard typing is
I was like,
Wizard,
so wizard typing is the big one these days, because with 2 wizard cycling cards, one of which is actually chain tutorable through like stuff like mystical tutor. It's actually super big for stuff to have wizard types in like low colored blue decks now.
Yeah.
You also see stuff like I don't think we actually have a we don't really have a tutor for it, or like a tutor target for it yet, but like for something like Cataran summons, where it's like
What do
1
you
mana
mean what
demonic
Cataran
tutor.
summon?
It's 1 mana demonic tutor for a mercenary.
Okay.
But just like
No, I've
think-
seen that card before.
yeah, just things
yeah.
like that where like the
So
the
that means like if
cost
they ever
and the
print a
effect is
really
super
important
powerful.
changeling.
Yeah,
that's-
exactly. Like if like they ever print like some like black white commander that combos with mirror entity, it's just like, oh, like immediately I have this like 1 mana tutor for my combo
Actually,
piece.
speaking of niche tutors
Huge spec.
and changeling, so when I was working on a like a Seton brew, and one of the so in Seton, like he obviously it gives all of your druids, it's like an earthcraft for druids. So future sight creature effects is pretty good. So when they printed Realm Walker, that's it's a changeling, so it's also a druid. That's sick. But one of the most hilarious interactions in the deck, I think, is that Treefolk Harbinger, which is a Treefolk druid, can
tutor
top
for
deck
Realm
tutor
Walker.
your Realm Walker. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, all kinds of really changeling is a type that is yeah. If they ever print like a super duper interesting changeling, that's for like the 99. Then yeah.
But
Look
there are
out
like
for-
just a bunch of those like random tutor-ish things lying around that like you can definitely look into whenever like new interest, like specifically creatures, but also like other card types are spoiled.
for
Like
sure.
yeah. The other big one right now is like auras and equipments, right? Because those are like super tutorable in the right colors, specifically in white, and like it might not be super obvious that like something might be super accessible if it's an equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So then we have. Oh, actually, I was gonna say one more thing. Yeah, there's we were talking about a piece that itself is tutorable. And one thing you could also consider, we're talking about wizards for blue. Is this something like, what if they print a 0 or 1 cost artifact that combos with a something in mono white, right? The fact that you could tutor chain through Urza Saga, because white can have an easier time tutoring enchantments than artifacts. I mean, they've got Enlightened Tutor, which can tutor either, but most of the time you've got a much easier time tutoring enchantments. So then you could find Urza Saga to then find the piece you need, that sort of thing. So also look at keep your mind open to tutor chain.
And even that, like, also on the topic of like 1 mana artifact combos, Artificer's Intuition, man, card that hasn't been broken yet, but it's ripe for it.
If you guys need to see how broken Artificer's Intuition can be, go look up the Gregory Hatch video on YouTube, where he just describes his Artificer's Intuition Legacy brew. That's an iconic classic Magic video.
We crack LED and activate Artificer's Intuition 2 times. We can cast the Salvage Titan and 2 baubles
Net
for
2/3
2/3
of a mana.
profitability.
I call it surfing. Yeah, no, dude, classic video. Every video that has Gregory Hatch in it is a winner. Yeah,
Dude, we should go find him and make him brew CEDH decks.
Oh my god.
Oh, this is if this podcast culminates in, like, if the entire purpose of this podcast was really just to get enough like accumulate and just the
Clout
minimum
to-
bare amount of clout
yeah.
to get Gregory Hatch on the podcast, dude, that would be absolutely legendary. But yeah, so that was what tutors find it. We also have looking at comparable existing effects.
Yeah, so I mean, this is another one that's like more aimed at things like again, staples, removal, interactive pieces. We see this a lot with counterspells, where if people are looking to, like, people will see a new counterspell, like I think the most recent one, probably recent memory, is like Miscast, I think.
Yeah, that sounds
Could be
right.
wrong. I think it sounds right. Where people initially are like, oh, this is just like so much better than other stuff that I'm already playing. Like, I'm just gonna put this in my deck or whatever. Or other people being like, no, this is unplayable. I'm never putting this in any deck that I'm ever playing. Like, it really, for a lot of the time, you just have to look at, like, actually compare it to existing effects rather than just making snap decisions on it. Just be like, what are the actual upsides and downsides of this? So, like, looking at it, you like, say for example, like, we'll take the miscast for example. Like, if I actually wanted to, like, evaluate it and see if I want to, like, I'm seeing miscast for the first time, like, is this going in my decks? Is it not? What about it? Like, you actually just have to break down upsides, downsides. So, like, compare it to Dispel. Well, they both target instants, but miscast also gets sorceries. That's an upside. But miscast is a soft counter. It's not a hard counter. So downside. And what does that mean? Well, you can extrapolate from there, right? Like, okay, well, that means that if I really need to hit the extra card type, this thing's probably better. But if I'm going into a long game and I'm most likely, like, going to be trying to hit instance and I don't really care about sorcery that much, then Dispel is probably better. I don't really need this. So, like,
Definitely
actually
a Dispel, Miscast, Spell Pierce, Flusterstorm alignment chart. You know,
yeah,
you could
exactly. But it's really, I really think that, like, people actually just need to walk through the upside downside list on new cards more often, because, like, you'll see a lot of people just making, like, snap decisions and, like, oh, this is so much better because of this specific scenario. I'm just gonna put it in all my decks over this now. It's like,
strictly better.
Have you actually
That's a
thought about
classic
this?
phrase.
Yeah. Oh god. I feel
know,
like
man.
we actually,
console-
strangely enough.
I feel like I'm always stuck on Flusterstorm.
Oh yeah,
No
I
matter
mean,
what.
I'm not saying I'm not playing Flusterstorm in all my decks, but certainly you have to think about what you're actually putting in. That being said, like, in terms of strictly better, when's the last time you actually heard somebody use strictly better in a CDH related conversation? Because I feel like we actually maybe successfully sort of started to kill that thing dead once and for all.
Hellbreacher.
Yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Reed.
Um,
But it did get banned. So
yeah,
there you
I
go.
mean,
Yeah.
if that means that we were probably using it correctly. If it's
Strictly better is not safe.
yeah, I do want to say though, I think one thing that the one mistake that people often make is they only, like, if you're looking at a specific card for a specific deck, they only compare it to, like, similar cards that they're already playing.
Right.
And, like, so let's say they print a new counterspell that looks appealing for your deck. Like, it's not necessarily true that the correct cut for it is, like, whatever you deem as the worst of, I don't know, Dispel or Miscast that you're already playing. Like, that's not necessarily something you can assume. And so what you need to do is you need to go, like, okay, first of all, like, let's compare this to, like, a couple of the counterspells that I think are best that I'm not playing. Like, maybe you're already not on, let's say you already weren't on Spell Pierce. You were on Dispel, you weren't on Spell Pierce. So, I mean, first there's the, is this better than Dispel? And then, if it is, then obviously you're going to be finding a slot for it, and maybe that slot isn't Dispel. But maybe it is. But if it's not better than Dispel, that doesn't mean you're not finding a slot for it, right? You need to go, like, okay,
how much better is it than the next worst card?
yeah, like, so I mean, if Spell Pierce isn't good enough, then you can at least compare it to Spell Pierce and go, okay, I think this is worse than Spell Pierce in my deck, so, and I don't think Spell Pierce is good enough, so I'm not looking for a slot for it. But if it's better than Spell Pierce, then maybe you do need to, you know, make an evaluation of, like, okay, can I drop a piece of removal or my worst mana rock or you know, whatever slot you may find in your deck. But I just want to caution people against, like, locking in your ratios of cards and being unwilling to sort of change them as new cards and new effects come out, because I think that is overly
That's
limiting.
Really yeah, I think one thing is with the way that things are with ratios of cards is, like, it often boils, it's like, oh, I've got the perfect amount of artifacts and you know, artifact ramp or whatever. and it's like if they printed you know a second Soul Ring, is it are you just gonna cut the next worst piece of ramp? Like is that where it is? Like maybe a better example, because if it's like you know a deck with like a mono green deck, or maybe not mono green, but like a green based deck where you're mostly ramping through one drop dorks, and then you know even though you're running null rods and collector oof, you're still running your Soul Ring and Mana Crypt, right? They printed second Soul Ring. You're probably not going to cut one of your dorks to slot that in. Like often, it's you run every single dork that's possible because the next worst one mana ramp is significant. So that's kind of like a haphazard me trying to kind of cobble together an example of why using like the hard amount of slots isn't necessarily right, because a lot of these aren't kind of arrived at super empirically, right? It really is this kind of feels right, and I know that the next worst card is quite a bit worse than the current worst in slot card. So you know you definitely need to compare how much better the next worst card is, you know, for each of your different card categories. Okay, moving on to the next one. I've got a couple of things that I like to use for determining whether or not a card is. A lot of times this is surrounding cards that are maybe not, you know, as obvious as something, or when I say miscast is obvious, I mean like miscast. It's obvious what you're comparing it to, right? You're comparing it to Dispel, Spell Pierce. It's got a pretty defined thing. But I like to use this kind of heuristic, which is how much are you really paying for the effect for things that are maybe not so obvious. So one that came up recently, I think, and there was a lot of hype surrounding this card, is Malevolent Hermit. And it's how much are you really paying for the effect is something that I think is important to consider. So to make it like a simple case, Glenalendra, Archmage, you're paying 4 mana for the body, and then 1 blue mana for the first counterspell, and then 1 blue mana for the second counterspell. So it's a total of 6 mana for 2 negates that are uncounterable. So that's a 3 mana uncounterable negate, you know, per on rate. So that's a kind of thing that I'm going to use for Malevolent Hermit. So what are you paying for Malevolent Hermit? You're getting on the front side, you're getting a 3 mana uncounterable, you know, mana leak negate, or I don't know what the proper term for that would be, but yeah, counter target non-creature spell unless they pay 3. And then on the backside, you're paying 3 for that uncounterability. Now on the front side, that 3 mana, you know, counter target non-creature spell unless you pay 3 is below rate. You know, look at how often negate sees play, and the fact that this is also a, you know, counter unless you pay 3 certainly does factor into this. If it was a hard negate, you know, and if it was just the you know, if it was, I guess that would make it 1/2 of Glenalendra, because you get, you know, 3 mana counter non-creature spell uncounterably, then that's a bit different. But because it is that tax, you know, it's only they still can get through it by paying 3 mana. You've got to evaluate it, you know, comparatively. And a lot of the cards that you would look at just aren't seeing play because they're poor on rate. So if it was just the front side of Malevolent Hermit, would you play it? Is basically the question. And I think pretty much in all cases it's going to be a no, unless you're getting additional synergy out of the card, like in Azami, or you're recurring it like Muldrotha or something, you know. And then so that brings you to the backside. How much is, because the thing with the backside is the card is not modal necessarily, right? You can't just pay 3 mana to have all your non-creature spells be uncounterable. You have to go through the bad rate on the front side first. So that is something that I like to add on to the rate that I'm looking at the backside. So, am I willing to pay a below rate counterspell on the front side to then get access to the backside for 3? And I think in a lot of decks, actually, the answer is probably not. It's not something that I just throw into every deck that's running blue and wants to resolve, non-creature spells. You need to be more conscious and deliberate about it. So a lot of things like, I think, Malevolent Hermit, if you have the additional wizard synergy, or if you're able to cheat to get to the backside, then it becomes a lot more appealing because you don't have to go through the front side that is below rate. So like it in Brawl, where you can just pitch it to Brawl's ability and then disturb it, or pay it for disturb cost. So yeah, and then you can apply this to a bunch of different effects, and I guess one of the I was gonna say, do you guys have another good example of something that that's come up somewhat recently in spoilers, or that you think fits that kind of you can apply that kind of analysis to?
This is a very good example. Like, it's kind of hard to beat.
Very specific one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, the reason why I put down this in our show notes and in the first place was because I thought people were way overhyped on Malevolent Hermit for kind of what they're getting. And it's just so easy to be distracted by the backside, and for only 3 mana I'm getting this effect. That's insane, right? And then so I also have kind of a follow-up point, which is, does this add something to my deck / strategy that I don't currently have? So this is kind of a good general heuristic to use, but it can go astray. So an example would be Witherbloom Apprentice and Chain of Smog, right? When Witherbloom Apprentice was printed or spoiled, everyone was like, oh my god, 2-card combo in Golgari, it's basically Thassa's Oracle Console. And that's not even an over-exaggeration, people were saying, and making that kind of comparison. So that does add something to, decks or strategies that don't really have that kind of 2-card combo, right? People talked about it in Gitrog, and people talked about it in a bunch of different decks that, basically anything that was low color Golgari, people were talking about Wither Smog. But the point that, I would like to say is this something that I need? So it's something I don't currently have, that's for sure. So it's allowing me to attack on a different axis, like a more efficient combo. But is that something that I need? So it's got to be, adding something to the deck, but it can't just be, arbitrary. It's got to be something that's worthwhile. So in Wither Smog, I'll go through an example for Gitrog, because this is something that I there's been a bit of controversy on the Frog server about people talking about this, and I kind of want to clear this up. So the Wither Smog combo, I was talking to one of the guys who's kind of an advocate for it, and he was saying that it provides him as a good plan B or C, if in case his plan A doesn't go well. And in plan A for Gitrog is your standard, Gitrog, Dakmor Salvage, discard outlet combo. So what needs to happen for you to abandon that plan? Well, if Gitrog is removed or countered, most of the time the deck is pretty well suited to just replay Gitrog. Your plan B is often just your plan A again. So you're not really going to want to, your Gitrog gets removed or countered, you're not going to be like, well, screw this, I need to try and work on assembling Wither Smog. No, that's not usually how it's going to go. So then what if it's like your plan C or D, like it's, you've been stopped 2 or 3 times. Then what? Well, so I could put a combo into my deck like Wither Smog, because then I get my commander's prohibitively expensive at this point. Or, maybe I should look at other things first. So to solve the same problem that I'm thinking that I'm going to solve by adding Wither Smog. So Command Beacon. That's a card that used to be running Gitrog. That's not being run right now because there isn't much need for it, and you know it if your commander gets removed a bunch, you can get the cost back, and you can reduce the cost by putting it back into your hand. That solves that problem. If you're locked out of your commander because of a Douthie, and so you're like, oh, if I can't cast my commander, not Douthie, Draneth. If I can't cast my commander because of Draneth, I can go for Withersmog, or I could just go for Command Beacon, you know, put it into my hand, play it. So, you know, just going for Plan A again. So, is it really solving a problem if you're able to solve that problem better doing other things, even though it's attacking on a unique axis? Probably not. Especially considering the inherent weaknesses of the combo. So there's and I mean the kind of details of the conversation went on even further to talk about stacks metas and blah blah blah. But like, yeah, you know, I don't have to rehash the entire conversation I had with the guy. But to summarize, it is just: is this solving a problem that I can't solve better doing something else? Because, you know, if the problem was so much of a problem that I needed to solve it, and I have better options, why haven't I done that already? So yeah. If that's that kind of sums it up in a neat little bow, I think.
Also, in regards to how much are you really paying for the effect, it's not just a small amount of mana. You're also discarding your hand.
Yeah, it's the one of the biggest problems with Withersmog is if it dies to I think there's like 4 or 5 pieces of interaction that don't stop it in CDH. Literally every other piece of interaction stops it, and 2 of those are Red Blast and Pyroblast. You know, it's Dispel, Red Blast, Pyroblast. Oh god, but yeah, like, you know, misdirections, deflecting swats, like everything just stops it. It's pretty brutal. And then if, you know, look at the worst case scenario, if that combo fails, you are left hellbent and with nothing, but a 2/2 that
Thanks, people, when you cast stuff.
Cross your fingers they print a commander that shores up that weakness.
Actually, it sucks because it doesn't even ping people. It makes them lose life, so you can't even like put a curiosity on it or anything. You're just stuck with a dude.
Yeah, like, I mean, if you, something, you know, Matt was saying, you know, how much does it really cost, you know, in terms of costing, you know, your hand or whatever. Something that could also be, you should look at in terms of cost is, how much does it cost, you know, to protect? Is this a combo that has built-in resiliency, or is it, you know, very fragile, and do I need to bake in, you know, some kind of counter magic cost into the cost of that card itself when evaluating? Withersmog, you probably need to bake in either the cost of like a Sylvan Safekeeper or a Veil of Summer or Autumn's Veil or something, you know? So yeah.
Yeah.
And now we have a list of a quick list of some kind of more, I wouldn't even say they're memey heuristics, but these are definitely things you should be aware of.
Memey.
They're legitimate, but very memey.
Yeah.
All right. Rapid fire.
Reed, you want to
just jump through them?
Okay.
Oh, sure. I'm down. Yeah, I'll go through them.
Go for it.
All right, cool. First up, we got, if it's a 1-3 CMC creature with lots of text, check Hulk Piles.
Check.
Is it a 3 or 4 CMC? Check Evolution Thrasios. Is it 7 CMC? Check Tassiger. Does it produce 2 or more mana? Check Seaborn Muse. Is it an equipment? Check Cole. Commander, can it block Timna?
Is it a green creature? Check Yisan.
Artifact? Check Oswald. Does it enter the battlefield? Check Urian.
There's the problem is every new card it's gonna meet one criteria to check some commander. Yeah, it's
is it a
actually,
check
Golos. I did find.
No, too soon, Matt. Too soon.
Is it a card in blue or green? Definitely don't check Edric because they'll never play it. I swear
heard they were talking that the new one
I
CMC
swear,
flyer
I
is not-
swear,
it's unbelievable.
Edric has not changed in like 3 years because Edric pilots refuse to play any new cards on like just completely arbitrary.
They've got some matrix
Evaluations.
that they're obsessed with card typing and rogues and stuff, I think.
It's just
Yeah,
so
the-
weird.
This is
bizarre to me.
This is the check I've been wanting forever. Is it a white and black commander, a CMC 2 or less?
Yo, let's go. check Lyris, hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Let's go. Cool. So I think that wraps it up with most of our kind of rule of thumb heuristics for evaluating spoilers. These are general tips, and it's hard to, even if you were to apply all of these, it's a lot of it is kind of just experience, which is unfortunate. But a way to kind of get experience or check to see if other people are kind of thinking the same as you is to just check discords around spoiler season. Most people let you know. It's on every single discord, on every single deck discord. New card comes out, someone will say, "Is this what do we think about this for our deck?" And people will let you know, so you can kind of get a gauge on what people are thinking that way. If you want to see if similar cards are being run in other decks, check the deck list database. There's all kinds of great resources for it. Every resource is great, except for the subreddit post comments. That's
Yeah, yikes.
I'm just kidding. No. So I wanted to end this kind of topic by going over some of the spoilers that we've seen so far for Neon Dynasty and applying some of the rules that we talked about. So I think one that I saw that I really want to... I mean, one we can talk about is free because we just talked about the meme. Is it 7 CMC check Tassiger?
Yeah.
Well, we did get a new 7 CMC card spoiled. That is a
Definitely did.
creature, and might go in Tassiger. And that is
Banana Boy got
Jin-Gitaxias.
complicated.
Jin-Gitaxias Progress Tyrant. So it's for 5 double blue, 5/5. Whenever you cast an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for copy. And then whenever an opponent casts an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, counter that spell. This ability triggers only once each turn. So,
Sort of interesting.
interesting. Some notable things is, I think because I guess this Jin-Gitaxias one is a bit weird because there was like a leak, almost a year ago or something.
Yeah, it was part of
where-
Strixhaven.
Strixhaven, yeah, where people thought like that there was some leak that had a Jin-Gitaxias that had very similar text, but it was like some notable differences, and people were freaking out over that one. And the
That one was
differences are
flash and
actually meaningful here.
uncounterable, so I
It had
definitely
flash and uncounterable, and also it's whenever it triggered off of each opponent, not whenever an opponent casts a spell, and it triggers only once each turn.
Yeah.
It was
what?
whenever an opponent casts
their first spell.
first spell. Yeah, counter.
And,
So
and also it made your spell free it made your first spell free
Yeah.
rather than copying it, but
yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think the first text copying versus making it free.
Yeah, I like copy better.
Copy has a lot of benefits.
I mean, so it does, but like I feel like making it free opens up more
No, it does open-
stuff
yeah.
as a standalone commander. But I think like
Yeah,
the copy is probably better for like just putting it in random
Tasker
decks.
deck.
yeah, for sure. But like, because obviously a copy is maxing out at a free copy of a spell that you already cast, which presumably is worse than casting the first copy of that spell for free in most instances.
I mean, having 2 counter spells is a lot better than a free counter spell in certain
Having
situations.
having 2 consoles is certainly better than having a free.
That's
Sure,
exactly
but
what I
like-
was thinking.
but like, I mean, okay, I think a free spell caps out higher because having a free, I don't know, Enter the Infinite is better than 2
yes.
copies of Consult or what, like, yeah, whatever. But yeah, I think
I would say basically having 2 copies gives it, like pseudo uncounterability. Or just at least it ups the requirements to counter whatever spell you're putting.
Also, I think flash uncounterable, counter the first spell each opponent casts each turn is like the most toxic thing ever. So I'm glad they didn't do that.
Well, I think what they did is they split the. They must have split Jin Gitaxias into 2 cards. One being Hullbreaker Horror and one being this Jin Gitaxias.
Who knows?
From that original leak. Because isn't what's the stats on Hullbreaker Horror? Is it 7/7?
It's a 7/8.
7/6?
7/8.
Or 7/8?
I think the original Jin Gitaxias was like a 5/7 or something. I was like, I knew there's something with the power toughness that kind of Hullbreaker Horror was reminiscent of, and then also the flash uncounterable. Yeah, speaking of other 7 drops that are great in Tasker.
Oh yeah, we totally missed a heuristic. Is it 8 mana? Check. Thrasios Dargo.
True. So yeah, I would say actually at first blush, this is definitely something to that I would consider for Tassiger. Looking at kind of the text, quite strong, but then I would go back to the heuristic that I was saying with like Wither Smog. Does it add something new to the deck, and is this something that I kind of need? Does it solve a problem that actually needs solved? So the current suite that you could go to in terms of 7 drops for Tasker, I would say there's probably like 2 guaranteed runs. One that's like a flex slot, one that's like kind of even more of a flex slot, and then let's see where Jin Gitaxias falls into there, or if there's instances where Jin Gitaxias would come up that others it solves a problem that the others don't. So our current, I'd say guaranteed 2 are Hullbreaker Horror and Toxrill. So Toxrill great into very creature heavy boards or metas, kind of just emanates or like dominates the board as soon as it comes down, and then it can also provide card advantage. Very nice. Then we've got Hullbreaker Horror, great for removing problematic permanents, turns non-counter spells into counter spells, or just turns your counter spells into kind of more uncounterable in a sense, because you can, if someone taps out for an Ad Nauseam with Force of Will and all this stuff backup, you can just cast any spell and then use the trigger to bounce it. So gives you great control over the stack, and then it's also a combo engine. We've got control of the board, control over the stack. Then we're looking at something like Nezahal. Okay, well, when would Nezahal be useful? Well, Nezahal, if you can't necessarily, like if you're maybe you're into a more stormy pod, Nezahal is a great kind of more value piece to throw down than something like a Hullbreaker Horror, which kind of requires you to be actively casting spells to kind of maintain that control over the game. And then Nezahal obviously also has this kind of evasion, so it's kind of protecting itself. The last one that people kind of look at is, or did used to look at, is Coma, which I think is mostly invalidated by Toxrill, because you're kind of looking at it as a way to take over the board and do some controlling. But I think, kind of Coma gets... There's not many instances where I think I would go for Coma over either Nezahal or Toxrill. And then Jin Gitaxias. Where do we think this fits in? Does this solve a problem that we can't currently solve with one of our other targets? Is there a good situation that you'd go into Jin Gitaxias over something else?
There's another target, which is Tidespout, just to kind of go off Reed's point of copying a console. Like, is this going to be a more efficient, better win than a Tidespout?
Well,
with Hullbreaker Horror?
Yeah. I mean, I think Hullbreaker Horror is the one you can Neoform into, obviously.
Yeah.
Oh, so I literally had those 2 cards backwards, yeah. Terrible.
But, yeah, I think that might actually depend on the build of Tasker. Like, I could certainly see a build that doesn't want to set itself up to be able to consistently Tidespout, Tyrant, or Hullbreaker Horror win. Like, typically that, you know, in a deck like Urza, it's very easy because like any 0 mana artifact with like remote upside is already in consideration.
Already in the deck.
Which means that like you don't actually need one of like a relatively narrow set of cards. Whereas like I could definitely see myself building a Tasigur deck that like wasn't super into the idea of, you know, being able to consistently turn on Mox Opal and like playing Mox Amber. Like Tasigur's like the worst with Mox Amber because it only makes black, which is definitely not what like, which doesn't even activate
one thing that some
Tasigur.
Tasigur lists run is, I think, Astral Cornucopia.
Yeah, but that's cursed, and I hate it.
It
so.
is cursed. I was doing a Tasker brew with Andrew from the Frog server, and he wanted to brew Tasker, and so we were brewing that. And we came up with a cool piece of tech that kind of does the same, or does a similar thing to Astral Cornucopia, but we think is kind of much more. It's for sure 100% more spicy. Whether it's better or not is debatable, but it's Shriekhorn. So Shriekhorn lets you stop early top deck tutors, but then also kind of accelerate you into a turn 2 Tasigur. And then it can also go infinite with Hullbreaker Horror because it's cheap enough to go infinite with a Crypt or a Vault, and then it's also a win out. So you don't even need to. It's instead of getting infinite, mana of your colors or infinite colored mana, you just mill people out. So yeah, that was our spicy piece. But yeah, personally looking at Jin Gitaxias, I don't think that there's many boards where, even in a build that's not dedicated for Hullbreaker Horror, where I would rather go to Jin Gitaxias than Nezahal or something. I feel like most of, because Jin Gitaxias getting to stop one, the first kind of, it's not even just non-creature, the first artifact, instant, or sorcery spell cast by an opponent per turn, compared to just drawing off of each of these, disincentivizing people to cast spells that way. Because it's pretty easy to kind of just throw something away into Jin Gitaxias, and then it's pretty easy to ignore from that point on. And it has the kind of Hullbreaker Horror text of you need to be able to cast spells to get the benefit of the first kind of effect.
I mean, yeah, I think it's a little bit different, but yeah. Like I could see a board where like if Toxrill wasn't super appealing, getting it as a value piece like might be better in a game that's like stalled, because it doesn't rely on your opponents doing anything to generate value, but definitely feels pretty narrow, which I think sort of ties back into our original discussions. One thing I've also seen a bunch of people talk about is setting up locks with him, and I just want to say that's not how that works.
It does not work that way.
So don't get yourself pranked by thinking that Rule of Law plus Jin Gitaxias is a lock, because your opponents can just have multiple people cast spells.
It's something called cooperation. I know it doesn't happen that often, but
yeah.
So that's Jin Gitaxias, and then I think maybe the last one we can touch on, and I think this is maybe the most exciting card that everyone was freaking out about today, is Boseiju who endures. Yeah, Boseiju who endures. So this is a legendary land, taps for a green, comes into play untapped, and it has channel. So for 1 and a green, you can discard Boseiju to destroy target artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land an opponent controls. Then that player may search the library for a land card with a basic land type, put it into the battlefield, then shuffle. And it costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. So a take that I've kind of been coming around to is I legitimately think that almost, or at least personally, that almost any deck that I would want to put in Nature's Claim into, I think I'd rather be running this than Nature's Claim. And I mean, it's a bit of a hot take, but also I think
It's not super
really.
unreasonable.
Yeah,
I mean, just being uncounterable is just nuts.
uncounterable
crazy,
is
yeah.
nuts, and then the modality of just like if you had a 2-mana uncounterable Nature's Claim that, you know, first of all, it also hits lands. Second, also gets around rule of laws and silences. That if you had that on a spell that could also just be like modally a waste, I think that would just still be incredible. And this is just better than that. So yeah, I think Nature's Claim is dead now.
I mean, you could certainly convince me that running two
run
Nature's
both.
Claims in a
Yeah.
deck isn't like
It's
crazy,
The worst.
but
But yeah, so one thing I think people, and we'd kind of talked about this, or actually Morgan had talked about this, about not getting too tied up in slots, which is I think one thing that people, the one thing I think people you would see them kind of immediately do is, well, this is a land, and Nature's Claim, you know, well, that's an instant. Well, if I'm going to run this over Nature's Claim, you know, I should maybe just cut a land to put this in. That's not what I'm saying. You know, a lot of times your decks have certain color requirements. Like for instance, if you're running, you know, Nature's Claim in a Thrasios Timna deck, right? And you're pretty happy with your mana base as is. And you're like, oh, I can cut Nature's Claim and run Beseju, and then I can also cut a land, you know, because I want to keep my land count the same. Now I have this free slot. Well, what you've done is you've made your land base worse instead of just upgrading a card that you were already running. So yeah, I think that's definitely an important thing to consider. Which is just, if you're gonna view this as a card replacement for Nature's Claim, don't just go cutting lands unless it is something that you can just put in for a land slot because, you know, let's say you're in mono green, or you're like your Yisan or your Gitrog, where you're low enough color that the land slot is you're not compromising on colors to put in this, then it's something you can do there, and then you cut the Nature's Claim and have that free slot. Yeah. Do you guys have anything to say in terms of evaluating this card? Because I feel like it's
just
obviously amazing. Yeah.
It's just dumb.
Yeah, but I think the best advice here is to not cut a land for it.
Yeah.
Or at least caution.
So I would say that for most decks, except for exactly, I'm trying to fit this into Cody right now and find a place in the mana base for it there. And I think you actually just cut a land for it there.
Yeah,
for
in Cody, I think Cody is more like Yisan than it is like Thrasios Tim.
That is such a hot take,
Wow.
but I love it.
Okay, it's the fact that you can run. So I mean, I know we disagree on depletion lands. I think you should run all depletion lands. You think you should only run the Grixis ones. I think you're on, right?
Grixis, if any.
Yeah. I just think so I obviously understand. You know, I mean, let's not turn this into an entire Cody thing, because, you know, my mana base is a bit different, but, you know, there's obviously a heavy importance on casting your 1-drops, or your important 1-drops that allow you to accelerate. But also Cody can just support colorless lands a lot easier than something like Thrasios Timna. Like you can't run depletion lands reasonably in Thrasios Timna, unlike Cody. Just due to the way he fixes it, but yeah, that's basically the extent of it. That's why I think he's more like Yisan than Thrasios.
Yeah, sorry. The one other thing I want to say on evaluation of this card is don't forget the hidden secret mode of giving someone who desperately needs mana to cast a counterspell on a game-winning spell mana.
and remember, it's not a basic
Oh
land.
my God.
This is not Assassin's Trophy. It's
That's
a
funny.
basic land type. So they can get a tropical island. They can get
Yeah.
a breeding pool or whatever they want.
Dude.
Any shock or duel is fetchable with Besiju.
It even draws a card in Git Rock. Holy moly.
Yeah, and
You
as
just
soon as
claimed
your
this to do
commander is
that.
out, it costs 1. It's insane. Yeah. I
Can't wait to
can't
see
wait
the
to
blue
abuse
one.
this with Loam.
Yeah,
Dude, it's gonna
that's
be so sweet.
bad.
Well, have you
Oh
have
my
you seen
God.
the legacy brew that people have put together for it, or like the idea that people have put together for it, which is it's a Karn lands, because
Yeah,
you can get
nice.
you can get the one that turns the thing.
Oh,
whatever
you
it's
get
called.
Yeah.
liquid metal
Liquid
yeah,
coating?
yeah, liquid metal
yeah.
coating or whatever the new one is, and then
liquid
just,
metal-
you
Metal
can just
torque.
Torque.
you just
yeah.
you have life from the loamable 2-mana vindicates.
Dude, they
That's
banned
so
punishing
awesome.
fire in modern. Yeah, this is oh my god, imagine if Renin, I mean, you can do that in, was that a modern brew or a legacy brew?
What?
You said,
Legacy.
Legacy.
because I was thinking
yeah.
in modern you have Renin 6, right? Renin 6 is still legal in modern.
Yeah, disgusting.
That is disgusting.
Anyway,
Yeah.
and also actually Ragavan is still legal in modern too. It's not in Legacy, so you can Ragavan to
Yeah.
discount it too.
Oh, true.
That's awesome.
Turn 1 Ragavan into turn 2 Reddit 6, turn 3 start munching your stuff.
Still legal.
Yep.
Yeah. Dude,
Anyway.
this land cycle is wild to think of that that they'd print good effects on an untapped land.
But you still need the blue one, right? Like I'm not missing it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
blue one. I was discussing with someone. We were saying the blue one. It has to, like, there's, if it's doing almost anything blue, it's like just broken. Like if it's like 2 and a blue draw card, still broken.
What?
Like
Yeah,
still
no
incredibly strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks.
5 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. Oh my god.
No, it's gonna be awful. There's no way it's not awful. Like, I don't know, Merfolk has like literally played a Boro just to like, or Manamo, like basically just to have blue lands that don't die to boil.
Choke.
Like
Yeah,
they
or
can't
boil.
they can't give surely they know that if the blue one does anything. Actually, here's the real troll. There's not even a blue one.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that'd be great. That would be perfect.
We decided we can't print a card.
it's
That's
4 of them and a colorless one.
Yeah. Cool. So I mean, maybe this is a good point to call it. Hopefully, this was instructive, and you guys can take away something and how to evaluate cards and spoiler season. And I guess maybe the biggest takeaway is don't get caught up in the hype and I think spoiler season is probably the time to be overly critical of cards, or to bias yourself a bit in that direction, because I feel like the generic trend is for everything to be, oh my god, this is so crazy in my blank deck. Like there's a new Tezzeret that was spoiled, and my one friend on the Frog server was saying how he thinks it's like really good in Emery, and I'm like, I just don't see it. I don't see it being that good. It seems like it has text that's like, oh, this has synergies, but there's lots of things that have synergies.
There's lots of things that have text.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, the one thing I will say though is that like it's also okay to just like, even if you don't you're like on the fence, like I don't know if this is really better than existing options, it is also just fine to like throw it in and jam a few games with it, if like assuming you actually play relatively regularly.
Yeah.
You can just kind of err on the side of let's give this a try. Maybe don't throw in this experimental card and immediately sign up for an expensive tournament, but like one of the ways of learning how a card performs and how often the situations where it's better than another card come up is just to play it. But definitely,
Yeah, and also,
I would say if you're doing that, you should also sort of make an effort to be conscious of like how you're evaluating the card, because I think sort of if you're really aware of like that you're trying to evaluate a card while you're playing, you can sort of gather more information, like, oh, how often, like, oh, this card, I can find it off of like the recruiters that I run or whatever. Like, okay, how many times did I actually do that? Like, how many times did I have a recruiter and go like, oh boy, am I glad I can find this new card, or whatever it is, and just really, do your best to be mindful of how it is actually influencing your game.
Yeah, I'll say one thing I think people do is they'll throw in a new card and then they'll play a bunch of games, and if you're not consciously testing it, the kind of takeaway will be, well, my deck didn't feel any worse, right? Or like, didn't seem like it caused any problems, and I can remember all these cool times all these times when it did something cool, right? And that's just a terrible way to test cards, because changing one card in your list of 99 is not going to significantly you're not going to necessarily feel its impact constantly, right? You really need to be paying attention to see, how often was this card sitting in my hand dead, and was I like, or how often was I extremely happy to see this card, that sort of. And then I also want to add that just because I'm saying, be maybe a bit more pessimistic or realistic on, kind of new spoilers and cards, doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't be excited about these new cards coming out, because new cards are just very exciting inherently. So even if you're like, well, I don't think Jin-Gitaxias is good enough for Tasker, doesn't mean you can't be like, holy fucking shit, this Jin-Gitaxias is super sick. Yeah. Cool. So I think we'll move on to we'll do a listener question, and then I've got a gut check for everyone, because my gut check is really dumb and I don't want to derail potentially
Okay.
discussion. So our listener question comes into us from patron Tegan. Tegan asks, you have a monkey's paw. You get to wish for one card to be banned from EDH. However, something awful gets unbanned from the list as payment. What card would you most want banned, and what would be the worst unbanned to go along with it?
Hey, wait,
funny
sorry,
because
can I-
often... Oh, sorry.
Can I make one caveat to this, which is
Sure.
no one's allowed to say Flash.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, okay.
like I would say Flash.
Can we also just not do like Black Lotus or like the Moxen or whatever? I don't know. I feel like it's.
I don't even think that's the
one.
worst thing that could happen.
Yeah, exactly. So just don't pick it. Okay.
Yeah. I'll say I do think it's funny because oftentimes, like, we'll joke about when something bad happens in Magic. It's like the monkey's paw curls. It's like, what did someone wish for this for this terrible curse to be inflicted on everyone? Yeah, dude. What terrible monkey's paw wish happened so that we all experienced Oko 60 card? Ugh. Shudder to think. I mean, I feel like the first part of what's one card that should be banned, or that we'd want banned, I feel like that's got to be like almost unanimous from most of us, right?
Console
think.
ban.
Well, I think
unban.
I think there are two reasonable options. One is certainly more in the forefront of people's minds, I'd say, but
Fine, then maybe I'll pick the interesting, and I'll suffer a lesser monkey's paw curse. Let me just pull up the ban list to see what's
yeah, see if you can figure out anything particularly terrible. I think
yeah,
I have mine
it's
already.
something that's of the appropriate weight.
Okay,
There's a
this is
Saga ban, Golo
this is
Saga
probably
ban.
not actually my first choice, but I have one that I think is like a reasonable ban and a fitting monkey's paw unban. And I'm just gonna throw it out. Actually,
Mine is perfect. I actually have the perfect one. Holy shit.
Perfect.
okay, now I have two. Dang, I can't decide which one I want to do.
Okay, I want to do mine first in case
All
someone
right,
steals it.
sure.
Wow.
Sure.
So I wanted to be a bit different. I was like, okay, so initially I was like, oh, it's got to be Thoracle or Console or something like that. I was like, what's a card I really hate that I'd like to see banned and I've railed against a lot? Draneth. Okay, so I wish for Draneth to be banned. The monkey's paw curls, Caracas.
Yep.
Caracas.
That was the second one that I came up with.
Okay, yeah.
My first one is I'd like to see Ad Nauseam banned, and the monkey's paw is that it's replaced with either Grizzlebrand or Yakbaw's Bargain.
Yep.
Damn it! I should have gone first. Well, then the obvious one, which I already said, console ban, Leovold unban.
Oh, nice. I think I'll go with the Oracle ban, Time Vault unban.
Yeah. That was good.
But okay, see, I don't like Time Vault. I mean, I guess like I don't know, it is a win con, but like I feel like Time Vault is, no matter what's banned, Time Vault is like a worse. You know, if Draneth was banned and Time Vault was unbanned, that would be terrible. Like,
sure.
A fitting.
Okay.
It's a fitting parallel.
Yeah. So
I
I think I'd mentioned this in the ban lists episode ages ago, but like I think Thoracle Consult is stronger than Time Vault untapping in many respects. I think the most obnoxious aspect of Time Vault thing is that it would literally be everywhere in every deck.
Yeah.
Like the
it's
issue,
like we
the
have
issue is,
some reprieve from Thoracle Consult in the meta, and then it's like, wow, what if every deck was also just on Time Vault?
Oh my god, you guys ready?
actually, no, here, sorry.
Profit of Krufix unban.
No, actually, I think I have a much better one. All right, so we wanna even out the play. There's way too much meta floating around right now, so we're gonna ban Dockside Extortionist, and then Tolarian Academy comes off.
Academy. Yeah.
It's like the complete opposite thing.
Dude, they ban fish. They ban fish because it lets people throw games, and they unban trade secrets.
Yeah.
Oh god. Yeah.
Or ban fish because it's a too impactful early game for too many cards. Just unban Ancestral.
Counterbalance ban. Ryo
I'm trying to
unban.
think.
I would
I
legitimately rather like if fish said like any opponent may have you draw 3 cards if they do counter the spell, I would use that option so often. Like on fish, like just trade your opponent's fish for a recall.
Okay, I'm changing my gut check to tie into this listener question because it's better than what I had. Okay? New gut check. What's the card on the ban list that you least would want to get unbanned?
Shahrazad.
Flash?
It's a fake answer.
I feel like it. I feel
No,
like
it's not
it.
Flash.
I don't think mine's Flash.
It might actually just be Caracas for me.
Mine is Caracas. Yeah, mine is Caracas.
Because it's so fundamentally undermines the purpose of the format.
Exactly. Yeah.
No,
like-
Time Vault would ruin it way more than Caracas.
Okay, I
So
mean,
Time-
I
Time
feel like
Vault-
I just
Time
had the
Vault
boring
ruins the
answer,
actual.
and it's Black
What's yours?
Lotus. Like,
Yeah, sure. Time Vault.
I
ruins.
think I'd rather have
Time
Black.
Vault's
We have
Black
Crypt
Lotus.
openers. We have Crypt and Soul Ring openers already. It's like Black Lotus is
Yeah,
like Black
no,
Lotus is
no,
Black
no,
Lotus
no.
is amazing, but like
No. Because Black Lotus, you don't understand. Like Crypt and Soul Ring aren't actually that great for combos. Black Lotus is both a busted opener card and just an insane card to have in the format because you can literally fire off a demonic tutor and turn it into a ritual.
dude, I understand how good Black Lotus is, but the point is I think you're still playing Commander and CDH if there's a Black Lotus in the format. I think with Caracas, it's you just can't play anymore.
Guys, Time
so
Vault
many
would
decks
literally
can't
be
play.
flash meta, like what do you even call it? Like incestuous flash meta, like on steroids. It'd be the worst.
What would
dude,
be
but then
possible meta.
Theta would be
Time
playable.
Walk. Sorry, Time Vault.
No, I don't think Time Vault is
Do
nearly
Revi
as
and
bad as
Theta
Leovold.
become playable?
Everything would be just a terrible Time Vault deck that would be sandbaggy and that'd be unplayable.
Okay,
No,
I know.
it would
I
just
know
be
what
all
it
the
is.
same decks also just running Time
Yeah,
Vault. I think,
Morgan,
for
what's
the
up?
most part.
It's
I don't know.
Golos, because then I'd have to put up with Linden's bullshit mid-power decks.
Oh man.
No, but okay. The reason I think it's Black Lotus for me, the like turn 1, wheel on the play, Rhystic Study on the play, Like, all of that stuff is, like, possibly my least favorite part about CDH. Like, the games where someone just has a busted opener and you don't actually have an opportunity to really do something about it, just, to me, feels like I'm not playing Magic. And if anything that makes those happen more, I'm firmly against.
My favorite part of CDH or EDH more broadly is the ability to have a commander that does something. And I feel like that just doesn't happen with Caracas.
What are you talking about? You can just play Kess as a Snapcaster mage. You could play Anala, dude. Easy.
I guess the one saving grace for Caracas is that it's not literally playable in every deck.
No, the one saving grace is that they
also,
just
like, a bad
printed
feature, though?
Besage
Like,
you.
Exactly.
The fact
so you
that-
can just
Yeah,
murder him on sight.
The fact that the playable white decks have Tymna means that you're going to see a bunch of Tymna decks with Caracas.
Yeah.
That's almost like worse.
I'm just looking at Caracas. I'm
Guys, Time
I'm
Vault
making myself upset.
would
thinking
suck more than all of what you're talking about.
Okay, so yeah, go to our Discord, and there'll be a poll, and you can all vote on which. I was gonna say which of us had the best answer, but really it is kind of which of us had the worst answer, right?
Yeah.
What do you want least in the format? Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. If you guys would like to reach out to us with any questions, comments, or concerns, you can contact us on Twitter at Into North Pod, by our email intonorthpodcast@gmail.com, or on our Discord server, the invite link for which can be found in the description for this episode. An extra special thanks to all of our patrons who help cover the expenses for our show and allow us to work towards improving the quality of the podcast. If you too would like to become a patron, we are at patreon.com/northpodcast. And the way you can support us is via our TCG Player affiliate link. So anytime you want to purchase something from TCG Player, you use our affiliate link, which is in the podcast/YouTube description. A portion of your purchase goes towards supporting the podcast. Thank you as always to the band Vox Cadre for our lovely podcast music. We need Slover for our equally lovely podcast logo, and to our video editor Manta Ray Hat. Next episode will be out in 2 weeks. Until then, see ya.